Okay, we'll get started here. So we'll start with item number 1, the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Cook, would you take the roll, please?
Yes, Mrs. Steffi. Here. Mr. Perez.
Here.
Dr. McBride.
Here.
Mr. Kizabeth.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here. All right, item number 3, adopt the agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or changes to the agenda?
None that I'm aware of.
All right, thank you. Can we, Mr. Cook?
Yes, Mr. Kizabeth.
Yes.
Mr. Perez.
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi.
Yes.
Dr. McBride.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 4. I believe Mr. Bose has some retirements for us today.
I think. There we go. All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I do. We have 5 retirement recognitions tonight. Kind of a bittersweet moment for us here tonight with recognizing these individuals. They've put in 130 years of service within Tiffin City Schools. But if you add up their total years in education and working in schools, it's over 150 years. They have touched thousands of lives throughout their years in the classrooms, in the cafeterias, on the playgrounds, and so on. So we certainly want to give them their due recognition for their years of service, dedication, and commitment to Tiffin City Schools. So first up, I'm going to bring up Mr. Alvarado, and we need Mr. Gary Borton. Please come forward.
A few words about Gary. Gary started with Tiffin City Schools in August 2013 as an educational aide at Tiffin Middle School for 1 year, and then has been assigned to the high school ever since. He has been a one-on-one aide with a number of different students where he had to follow them to Sentinel for career exploration, culinary, and independent living classes. Mr. Bourne previously worked for 35 years at American Standard and 5 years at the NCO in Fremont before coming to Tiffin City Schools. Memorable moments for Mr. Borton working at Tiffin City Schools include the interactions that he had with teachers at the high school. He states he was always treated with kindness and respect, and that it is true you will miss the people you work with the most. After retirement, Gary wants to spend as much time as possible outside with his wife traveling, hiking, and gardening. There are always plenty of projects to be done around the house. He has six grandchildren, which will keep him very busy as well. Mr. Bourne wants to thank Tiffin City Schools for allowing him to be part of the Tiffin Columbian family. Best wishes to Gary for a well-deserved retirement. And a few words?
No, I really wasn't planning on saying anything, but I really have had a good time at Tiffin, and I'd like to thank my wife and all the people I work with, all the ladies that help me out with the computer, because that's really not my generation. So again, I've had a really good experience, and I'm glad I've had it. Thank you very much.
Next up, I'd like to call Mrs. Colleen Neely to tell us about Michelle Distel, who couldn't be here tonight, but we're still going to recognize her for her retirement. Ms. Neely?
Mickey, otherwise known as Michelle, but don't you dare call her that unless you want to get a really dirty look, has been with Tiffin City School District for 29 years. She'll finally get to retire at the end of this school year in just a couple of days. Mickey grew up and spent her entire life residing in Tiffin. She attended St. Mary's for elementary school, Mohawk for high school. Even though Mickey has been employed with us for 29 years and hardly looks a day over 30, she shockingly has worked other places before this. She worked at a daycare, Joanne Fabrics, and babysat for 15 years. And I'm sure babysitting for 15 years alone has certainly prepared her to work here. Her entire career at Tiffin City Schools has been in food service. She has worked in many buildings and kitchens over the years. She has also been able to work with a lot of different people. She started at Noble, went to West Junior High, to Columbian. She got to work at the brand new Tiffin Middle School, and she's going to finish her career at Kraut Elementary, where she has been the last 3 years. I had the pleasure of meeting Mickey 2 years ago when I started at Tiffin City Schools. She's been a wealth of knowledge with all of her experience. Her coworkers had so many positive things to say about her, and we will all greatly miss working with her. I asked Mickey which had been the biggest change to food service, and she started. She said when she started working in the kitchens, almost all the food was made from scratch. I asked what her least favorite task was, and it's doing the dishes, which I'm sure that's a lot of people's least favorite task. Her favorite part of working in food service is seeing and talking to the students each day. She loves getting their feedback and hearing them talk about the menu. Mickey has been married to her husband for 45 years. She has 4 children and 10 grandchildren. She's looking forward to visiting her grandkids that live out of town and out of state. She has not been able to do that enough because of work. I asked her what she was looking most forward to now that she would have more free time. She said that she loves to camp in the fall and she's looking forward to seeing her family more. Mickey said she would like to return to Tiffin City Schools as a food service substitute after she retires, which is great news for her coworkers and students alike, as we will not have to miss her for very long.
Next up, we have Mr. Douglas Hartenstein. Again, Mr. Hartenstein could not be with us tonight. He is committed to a baseball game or something. But no, I know he'd like to be here, but obviously he has other responsibilities. But Mr. Alvarado, please come forward.
Doug Hartenstein has been a part of Tiffin City Schools for a total of 48 years. I'm going to say that again, a total of 48 years, beginning as a kindergarten student at Bloomville Elementary School through graduation from Columbian High School in 1986. Mr. Hartenstein worked summer maintenance while attending college, has been working for Tiffin City Schools since 1992 as a teacher, coach, and an administrator. During his 32 years of service, Doug has held many roles and responsibilities, including 11 years teaching science and math and coaching football and baseball. He served 21 years in multiple administrative positions, including Columbian High School principal, assistant principal, dean of students, and athletic director. He also served as principal of Tiffin Junior High, Lincoln K-5 Elementary, Kraut 2-3 Elementary, and as Director of Secondary Instruction and Personnel at the Administrative Office. A few accomplishments during Mr. Hartenstein's career include ODE School of Promise designation, ODE School of Excellence designation, Nation Title I Distinguished School, and Nation Blue Ribbon Award, all occurring while principal at Lincoln K-5 Elementary School. As a teacher, he was selected as Crystal Apple Award winner as well. Along with his 11 years of coaching baseball and football, he shares with his fellow coaches and players multiple league, sectional, district, and regional championship as well as 2 state appearances. As head baseball coach, he helped guide the team to the 1996 Division I state championship game and runner-up. Most memorable moments for Mr. Hartenstein include being able to present his 3 children, Peyton, Ryan, and Megan, with their high school diplomas as graduates of Tiffin Columbian High School. Mr. Hartenstein has no definite plans for retirement, but he can't wait to find out what is next. Best wishes to Mr. Hartenstein for a well-deserved retirement.
Don't go too far. Next up, we have Mr. Mark Ingalls, Columbian High School, Mr. Alvarado. Again.
Come on up, Mark. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to do this in English and not Spanish. Mark Ingalls has taught in Tiffin City School District for the last 33 years. He also taught in the Boston area for 8 years prior to coming to Tiffin. At Tiffin Columbian High School, he has taught all levels of Spanish over the years and was a part of the team designated by the state to initiate statewide objectives, outcomes, assessments, and also was the founder of our National High School Honor Society chapter. Outside of the classroom, Mr. Ingalls has worked with many of our athletic programs. Most recently, he finished his tenure as a cross-country coach, producing many all-league, all-district, and all-regional athletes. The program now is in the midst of a 6-year reign as league champions. He has also served in our cross-country carnival, our SBC NOL league meets, and the regional meet for the last 33 years as well. However, his greatest achievement here has been working with his daughters both in and outside the classroom. Handing each of them their diplomas will always be etched upon his heart. He also met his wonderful wife at Tiffin Columbian, and without her unwavering support, this would not have been likely. Future plans for retirement are in the works, and Mr. Ingalls is very excited to see what the next chapter holds. Best wishes to Mark for a well-deserved retirement. Congratulations, Mark.
Just thank you for all. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you on a bike ride.
And our final retirement recognition is Mrs. Stephanie Ricker, and she will be presented by Mrs. Jenny Beeston.
Stephanie Ricker graduated from Hopewell Loudon High School and continued her education at BGSU, where she earned both her undergraduate and graduate degrees. She has taught in 3 different school districts, Cary, Bettsville, and of course, Tiffin City Schools. Throughout her career, she has taught kindergarten through 8th grade. She is ending her career in 2nd grade. She's finally graduated 2nd grade, as her colleagues posted on the retirement party flyer. Stephanie stated, "I have shared many magical moments with my students during my 34 years of teaching. My father was a teacher, and my daughter is also a teacher. My son is a staff sergeant in the U.S. Air Force, and he has spoken to my classes about his service to our country. I have enjoyed my positive interactions with students, parents, and adults in the education setting. Sharing the love of reading, music, theater, and science with my students has been a privilege for me." Some of Stephanie's peers were asked about her. Mrs. Burke shared how Stephanie has always been very kind to her. She recalled one summer she was unable to get into her classroom until the first day teachers required to be here due to personal family concerns. Stephanie had begun preparing her room and then continued to help her to get ready for the upcoming year. Another of Stephanie's colleagues shared, "Stephanie Ricker is a free spirit who is extremely kind and caring. She has a great love for the liberal arts, which she has incorporated into her daily lessons with many hands-on creative projects. You can hear her singing with her classes frequently. She would use Mr. Rogers' quotes, books, and song sharing to instill positive self-esteem and kindness. She even has "Be Kind" on her car license plate. She loved planning wonderfully engaging events such as an air pressure science experiment and her fun festival that taught entrepreneurship like producer, consumer, goods, and services. She has led over 10 students to winning the Martin Luther King Jr. writing contest held at Faith United Methodist Church. Stephanie is a wonderful friend to all and a very supportive colleague. She has a heart of gold and would give everything to help anybody in need. In her retirement life, she plans to teach children's Sunday school and perform solos and duets at church. She is also looking forward to auditioning for musical performances at our beautiful Ritz Theater. Most of all, she plans to spend more time with her wonderful family and friends, as well as traveling with them. Her final thought, she's sure to carve out some time for a little karaoke. Kraut 2-3 staff, along with me, congratulate Stephanie Ricker on an amazing career with Tiffin City Schools and wish her nothing but happiness and amazing memories in her retirement.
Yes, Fred Rogers. He started all this. I remember my mom would make strawberry quick milkshake with the milk, and I would stir it up, and I would sit in front of the TV, and there would be Fred Rogers. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. And I knew that at 3, 4, 5 years old, and I would just like stare at the TV and wouldn't move, you know. And then over the years, I've studied different speeches that he's given. I've read his books. In college, I did several reports on his philosophy. And in 2 weeks, my daughter, who's a teacher, is taking me to Pittsburgh to see all the memorabilia and to get pictures and to celebrate. And they got a bed and breakfast. And so I get to actually experience his museums and memorabilia and everything. So I'm really excited. That's in 2 weeks. But parting notes, something that I think is my philosophy, and Fred would share this if he were here, but children bloom and grow at their own speed, in their own time, and in their own unique way. We need to help guide them as they naturally develop and reveal their gifts and talents to us. This allows for creativity, confidence, discovery, free thinking, and higher level thinking. This is how education was 34 years ago when I first started teaching. I really miss that philosophy of education. My daughter is an Ohio teacher. She has been teaching for 7 years. My dream for her and for all future students and teachers is that education in America turns back to its beautiful, meaningful, authentic, and inspiring self. I hope and wish that I will see this positive change during my lifetime and my daughter's career as a teacher. Thank you to everyone who has shown me kindness, support, and love over my 34 years in education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bose. And thank you to all the retirees. It's a little bittersweet to have 130 years of experience in the district walk out the door. But thank you very much for your service. I think a lot of us up here probably have kids who have gone through the district or been co-workers to some of you. So thank you very much again.
I too would like to thank our retirees. I've worked with many of them, and it's all about the relationship you build with kids, and they've done a great job with that. I also want to say something about Mark and his wife, Vicki. Both of them coached with me, and in all my years of coaching, they're the only two assistant coaches I ever had that married each other. So that's very special as well. But again, as you retire, take with you all those relationships and positive things that you have done for the number of kids you've touched in your careers. Thank you very much for all you've done for education, and thank you very much for all you've done for Tiffin City Schools.
And Mr. Hartenstein's not here because he's on the baseball diamond, but I'm very fortunate that he was principal of 2 of my kids going through Kraut. And he, like all of you, I owe you all for the way my kids have turned out. and I continue to see success in them, and it's all indebted to you guys because you guys do the magic, not us. So
Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, and I will speak slowly so Mr. Cook can get his presentation ready. All right, we have one presentation this evening. It's the 5-year forecast and assumptions from Mr. Cook. So whenever you're ready, take it away. Do you need us to discuss anything in the meantime? Okay.
We go. All right. Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ryan Cook. I'm the district treasurer here at Tiffin City Schools. And in our work session earlier tonight, we discussed the May 5-year forecast update. 2 requirements that need to be met, ORC 5705 and OAC 3301. It requires the Board of Education to submit a 5-year projection of operational revenues and expenditures along with the assumptions to the Ohio Department of Education, or due now prior to November 30th, and an update each May. I'm required to include the general fund, any special cost center associated with general fund money, emergency levy funds, and any debt service activity that would have otherwise gone to the general fund. Purposes and objectives. This is a time to engage the community in long-range planning and discussions of financial issues facing the schools. I'll have a couple slides at the end that I think encapsulate that well in an easy-to-understand picture. Second, it's to serve as the basis for determining the school's ability to sign the certificate required by ORC 5705.412, which is the 412 certificate that legally allows me to encumber and spend funds on behalf of the district. Last but not least, it provides a method for the Ohio Department of Education and the Auditor of State to identify school districts that have potential financial issues. Before we get to the numbers, it's important to note that a financial forecast is a snapshot of what we as a district and what I know as a treasurer today. The 5-year forecast is viewed as a key management tool, and it should be updated periodically. Again, I'm required by law to do that twice a year. I keep a constant eye on this as I shift expenses and revenues around monthly. In a financial forecast, the numbers only tell a small part of the story. For the complete forecast to be meaningful, it's important that you review the notes and assumptions before you draw any conclusions or use the data as a basis for any other calculations. The 5-year forecast encourages district management teams to examine future year projections and identify when challenges are going to arise. And we talked about some of those previously in the work session tonight. Again, the whole point of this document is to help management be proactive in meeting fiscal challenges that may arrive. Key line items. The 5-year forecast is divided into 2 sections, revenue and expenditures. The district's revenue is made up of 2 main sources, local and state funding. And expenditures are mainly salary, wages and benefits, purchase services, supplies and materials. As a service industry that predominantly employs people, the largest expenditure we have is obviously our salaries and benefits. Major revenue assumptions. Due to the reappraisal, property tax values grew $109.5 million in tax year 23, or 30% due to that reappraisal. Down in Columbus, they were working on legislation, House Bill 187, that kind of threw a wrench into everything. We didn't have accurate projections coming out. County auditors were scrambling because they didn't know if the formulas they used for reappraisal were going to continue or not. However, for the time being, those in Columbus didn't do anything. So there was no change in the valuation methods in 2023. Tiffin City Schools hit the 20 mil floor for Class 1 property in tax year 23, and we should remain at the 20 mil floor in the tax year 26 update. This will result in new revenues for us moving forward. As I discussed with the board previously, when you're at the 20 mil floor, Any levy we do should be an emergency if we're going to go a property tax. The other option would be an income tax. We want to make sure that we don't pull ourselves up off that 20 mil floor, because we could recognize a scenario where the millage we've passed costs us more money when we pull off of that floor. So we need to be mindful as a board of that as we move forward. House Bill 33, which is our budget bill, has us on the foundation funding formula. Fluctuations in enrollment and values are going to move our funding. We spoke about that. Right now, we're pretty flat on enrollment, but as we tweak things moving forward, every student we lose or gain will have a negative or positive impact on our bottom line. So enrollment is very key to us. House Bill 34 is funded for this fiscal year and next. The state operates on biennium budgets every 2 years, but not beyond fiscal year 26. So it's flat funded in the forecast. I would anticipate, given the financial condition of the state, we'll see them continue to fund that third of the Fair School Funding Plan, but we don't know yet. We'll begin to get clarity on that next year. Interesting point for everyone out there, revenue growth over the 5-year period is estimated to be a little less than 2.7%, but our expenditure growth is nearly 5.09%. So that right there indicates it's not sustainable in the long run. Revenue is not keeping pace with our expenses, and we'll see that as we move forward. This slide right here does a pretty good job of showing cash balance is positive through FY27, but last fiscal year we entered deficit spend as a district. So we're spending more than we're bringing in. There is an actual cash deficit projected in FY28, just over $400,000. That's a huge improvement from where we were in October. Before we had the reappraisal and hit the 20 mil floor, we were approximately 5.8 million in the red. So you can see the impact that has had on our revenue stream, which has much improved our finances. And again, there's 2 biennium budgets in this forecast. I'm not panicky over that. I'm cautious and concerned because we need to take steps to address that. We cannot close our general fund in the red, but we have time. We're aware of it. That's why we have these updates twice a year. Revenues versus expenditures. Again, cash balance remains positive through FY27. Our ending cash balance stays above 30 days, which is kind of a government benchmark by GFOA for a reserve balance that we should have on hand to continue to be fiscally solid or prudent as we operate. This models our most current state revenue data for this fiscal year and next. And again, expenses exceeded revenue starting in FY23. You can see on this chart here that there's a 60-day cash balance. That's a benchmark that the board has passed that management needs to try to adhere to make sure we're fiscally stable and prudent. But again, a 30-day is recommended by GFOA, so we're well within comfort levels to operate with where we're at. Ending cash balance, 30 to 60 days is a responsible target, but as I mentioned previously, we cannot be in the red. We have to have a 0 balance or greater when we close the books yearly. Again, 5 fiscal years out, 4.5, we still have plenty of time, but you can see if we just continue to operate as we are today, we're in an unsustainable position in FY28. Estimated general fund revenue sources for this fiscal year, it's darn near split, 50-50. I always like to point out, it's a blessing the state gives us half our revenue, but when the state catches a cold, we're gonna get sick because we're relying on the state for half of our revenue. So it's just something to be mindful of. Although they're in a good spot, you just never know what the legislature is going to do. They're privy, they swing with elections, there's political forces at will, and again, those things change over time. So half of our revenue comes from Columbus. State and local funding, again, here you can kind of see how they flatten out. House Bill 33, the budget bill, and then our tax year 23 reappraisal. We did get some growth, as I spoke of earlier, resulted in about 1.1 million in new revenue to the district. But it slows as state funding depends on those 2 new biennium budgets. So we see the blue line is the local revenue, the red line is the state. 24 and 25, we had those big jumps. So we're ahead of that. But over time, until we hit reappraisal again, the delta between those two begins to narrow. As I pointed out earlier, revenue's growing at approximately 2%. Expenses are just over 5%, so they're not keeping pace. House Bill 33 has us on the funding formula. It provides increases this fiscal year and next. But we just don't have clarity on FY 26 through 28 because we don't know what the state's going to do yet. Property values grew with reappraisal, but the legislature does have a committee in Columbus to study taxation that could impact the 20 mil floor. Anytime Columbus starts monkeying around with things, I think everybody in government gets a little bit nervous. It's been this way since the 70s with House Bill 920. But my understanding is back in the 70s, it was the same ingredients we had last time, huge tax increases on reappraisal in the counties. So they put 920 in to try to alleviate pressure, put the 20 mil floor in to kind of say districts can't fall below this. Well, my hunch is now they're looking at ways to relieve that property tax burden on taxpayers, so they may monkey around with that formula. I hope they don't, but we'll see. It is an active committee in Columbus. Expenses are growing 2 times faster than revenue. It's definitely not sustainable. And here's a point I'd like to note. There's been a lot of discussion, probably some angst in the district as we've really started to hone in on our fiscal position. The district is going to have to look at budget cuts. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to lop off 15% of the budget tomorrow. I think we're trying to be much more strategic than that. We're looking at attrition. When somebody chooses to leave the district, management dives in and goes to work to determine, do we need to fill that position? Can we operate more efficiently with it, without it? Is it needed? Where are our student to teacher ratios, et cetera? We just had a big increase that hit our local tax base. We're very mindful of that. We're doing everything we can to close that gap between revenue and expenses without being on the ballot here in the short term. Estimated general fund expenditures this fiscal year is right around $32 million. As I mentioned previously, wages and benefits are our largest expense, just under 73%. That number's a little bit on the misleading side, only in the sense that we have large purchase services contracts with our ESCs and other support agencies. We have a lot of staff that are employed by them. So while it looks like we're actually pretty lean, a lot of districts will run 80, 85% before the red flag goes up on salaries and benefits. We have a large percentage that are through other third-party agencies that are salaries and benefits. We consider those folks our employees as well. It's just a matter of how we pay them. So 72.7 is good, but we do have those additional outsourcing through other folks that are employed by us. So that would prop that number up if they were back on our books. General fund expenditures by object code through estimated FY28. This is our salaries, our benefits, capital outlay, utilities. You can see the blue and the red again are the salaries and benefits. And then the green is that purchase service, things like our ESC, OT, PT, various services that we contract for outside that we just simply can't hire folks or don't have the capability to provide. So you can see there's not a whole lot of meat left for capital outlay, for materials and supplies, and then other expenditures. People is what we're here for. Again, this is the benchmark the board really tries to watch to keep us on a fiscally sustainable path, true day ending cash balance. Right now, we're above that 60-day level through FY26, but we hit some challenges towards the tail end of this forecast. Again, can't reiterate enough, we have time. We're having these discussions on an almost daily basis at the administrative level. We're aware of the problems and we're working diligently to plug those holes. So what does all this stuff really mean? What's the point of a 5-year? We've got the legalities, et cetera. I always throw these charts in. I get a few chuckles, but I like to think of it like a hurricane. We've got a storm out there in FY28. We don't know when it's going to hit, what it's going to look like, how big is it. It's up the East Coast. It's down the East Coast. And for argument's sake, Tiffin will be Florida. I have the answer to this coming up. The whole point of these maps are to let people know there's a storm on the horizon, something's coming, we have to prepare. Is it a levy? Is it attrition? Is it budget cuts? We don't want to stick our head in the sand and not do anything. So again, the Weather Service puts these charts out for hurricanes. I like to say people can go to Home Depot and buy your plywood. If you're on the East Coast, you want to be buying your plywood now, not when everybody's going to purchase their plywood. So we're mindful in doing the same thing with our finances. We're trying to take advantage of the time we have to shore them up so that when the storm hits our doorstep and we're Florida and it comes right up that East Coast, we've got everything in place that we need to do to be fiscally sustainable. I really can't think of a better way to encapsulate how a 5-year forecast works. We have time. The numbers, they're not right. They're going to change. They probably change by tomorrow. I have to take a simple snapshot of where I think we're at today, what staffing levels we're going to have, what tools we're going to provide our teachers to educate, and make a guess. This is what the Board of Education is asked to approve twice a year. It's the document we use to make those key management decisions, again, to make sure that when we're educating kids, we can do it sustainably. And I think that's the key in the long run, is to be sustainable. That cash balance is going to help us ebb and flow, smooth those deficits out. But we've got some work to do there, and we're well aware of it. So with that, any questions?
You explained to me the 20 mil floor. I want to give that back to you for people that are listening now.
Okay.
House Bill 920, back in 1976, or whenever it was, that you get so much money on whatever you vote for millage, and that rate goes down because you're not going to gain more of that money until you hit the 20 mil floor.
Correct.
Now, once we go below the 20 mil floor, the reappraisal brings the taxes back up to the 20 mils.
So House Bill 920 basically neutered school districts from getting any inflationary gains in a levy when they pass it. There's the voted millage. Let's say we passed the voted levy at 20 mils. Over time with reappraisal, whatever the percentages were, it's rolled back to hit 20. So once you hit 20, you're at the floor. Then the next time we have appraisal, like let's say this one where we got the 30% increase, the county auditor does their work with their appraising agencies. It rolled our effective millage down to 17. I think it was 17.1. So let's say there's a 3 mil gap between the 20 mil floor and what the auditor rolled us down to. The local tax paying base has to then pick up that slack to hold us at the 20 mil floor. We as a school district can never fall below the 20 mil floor.
Okay.
So it does result in extra revenue to the district. The very same thing could happen again the next reappraisal. We don't have any idea what it's going to be yet. We forecast, I believe, 4.5%. It'll roll back down from 17 to, let's say, 15. So then there's that gap between 20. We've already picked up the 3. There'll be 2 more mills that we'll gain on that. But unfortunately, back in the 70s, when these same ingredients were there, high reappraisals, hitting the taxpayers, the legislature thought 920 was a great idea. It likely was at the time. However, there's been long unintended consequences with that since the 70s. That's my fear with this committee that's down there now, because nobody likes to pay taxes, but at the same time, we have all these institutions we need to fund. So what are they going to do, if anything, in Columbus that could impact that 20 mil floor? They could lower it to 10. I hope they don't. I would encourage folks out there just to pay attention to that, to advocate, because it could have impacts on your taxes. But we don't know yet. Does that help?
Thank you.
And to clarify, you just said the assessments went up 30%. That wasn't for everyone, and you're not talking about the revenue that the school got. We didn't get a bump of 30%.
Correct.
Right, so it just sounds that way. And then the other issue, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like our value went up. So if we were getting a percentage, it actually gets diluted, but to bring us up to what we're getting, we get more, but it's not because we raised our taxes.
Yeah, it's not because we raised taxes. It's that voted millage versus effective millage when they come in and do that reappraisal. So it's they're closing that delta between 17 mills and 20 because the state says Tiffin City schools can no longer fall below anything but 20 mills. So they call it that floor. That's the lowest we can go in theory for the time being.
And then,
Thank you.
And then I think I said in the previous session, we had the comments where as we're working to fit better, right size our district, and you indicated we're looking at when positions are opened up, whether we're going to fill them or not. In tonight's agenda, we do have, like, we're losing an art teacher who's moving out of the district, I believe, and at that point, we have to maintain the program too. It just can't be the priority is, oh, we lost a teacher, we can just let that program go, because our priority is meeting these financial needs. And I think our taxpayers have to understand is, do you want us to do that, or do you want us to maintain and expand what our students want? And again, with the art, that's one of the few programs that brings our students into the buildings.
Yeah.
And that our students actually want to come in and do projects on that and work together collaboratively. So again, I think as a board member, I just don't want us, doing attrition and not putting people in the right places where they need to be.
So I think it's important to note, while the finances are important, we're still here to educate kids. I don't think I can say that loudly enough. I'll speak for the board on that one. I think I know you all well enough. You want to educate students. I spoke earlier and mentioned in here, it probably wasn't caught, but we're on the funding formula, which means there's all this math that goes into how much money does Tiffin City Schools get. And I think we're in this dance fiscally where we have to be mindful of the programs and the options that we provide for students. Because again, as we lose students, that impacts the amount of money we receive from the state. So we could be kind of chasing our tails, if that makes sense. If we gut programs, if we get rid of opportunities that students have here, we'll see the inverse of that then. It'll hurt our revenue as well. So then we're going to be chasing ourselves in this downward spiral. So I know the administrative team, Michelle, Bob, Mr. Nadeau, and myself, we have these conversations, and I'll call them critical conversations. They're good. We're honest with each other. Everybody knows kind of the fiscal position of the district, but we also know the inverse, that we have to educate students. And although I draw stick people, I know art's important, and there are students that's their jam. I mean, that's what they're here for. So we have to make sure we have those. And that's one thing, that's why I like city districts. We have opportunities. And that's what we're known for. And if we cut the 2 Ps, people in program, that's going to be perilous. It's going to put us in a bad spot. So I think we're mindful of that, and we know that, and we're working diligently to make sure we balance that.
I think, and I don't want to get specifically into that program, but I think that also includes like the AV component, that if we want to stay competitive with other schools, they have, I think, some better studios, some better technology. And these are actual job skills that our students can get here.
I mean, whether we like it or not anymore, school choice is a thing. Open enrollment's been around. It doesn't matter what I think or what we think. That's the law of the land. And if we don't provide those options, somebody else will, which means the loss of a Tiffin City Schools student to another district, and that's detrimental. That's fine.
All right. So long story short, the zero balance still exists out in 2028 as it did the last time we saw a forecast, but it's a much lower impact right now. We have a lot more, we have more time. I don't want to say a lot more time, that's the wrong, but we have more time than we previously thought.
We do. We have time. That bought us a lot of time. I know the administrative team, we've already made some moves. They just necessarily haven't been formally acted upon. I think when we move to October for that update, we're going to see that figure's changed. I'm confident we've eradicated that deficit.
And this $483,000 deficit that you're showing right now feels solvable
Oh, absolutely.
as opposed to
5.8 million.
0.1 million.
5.1
Yeah.
felt catastrophic.
Yeah, it did.
feels
It's
like a
huge. That was
solvable
like
problem.
12% of our budget. This is, I mean, I don't want to minimize it. It's a lot of money, but
No, but if you
we've
feel like
solved
you
it.
can solve a problem, then you can solve a problem.
We've solved
right?
it.
Yeah.
We're already there. I'm confident.
Okay. All right.
And again, it buying us time isn't time to do nothing. It's bought us time to put plans in place that
That's it.
are strong plans. It's bought us time to implement them because it takes years to see
It does.
the flip side of that.
Does. Yeah, I think that's the key. We can't let any grass grow. We thought we were looking at the ballot this year. We're going to avoid that. We're in a position that's strong enough now. We can avoid it in 24. We can really come up with a concrete plan and potentially look at a levy if needed in 25, but to be determined on that front.
Any other discussion or questions for Mr. Cook?
No, just thank you, and thank you to you and the administration for the diligent work, and there's obviously some relief, but you're right, we can't do nothing, but it feels much better for sure, and
I would agree.
it is a balance too, I think, of, maintaining the superior programs and teachers that we have, but also we still have to be aware and responsible, so thanks for all your work.
Okay,
Welcome.
thank you, Mr. Cook. Okay, we'll move on to item number 6, interim superintendent's reports and recommendations. We have one item under there. So, Mr. Nadeau.
One item, Title 6B, Special Education. So in accordance with federal programs, the district shall provide annually an opportunity for comment to the general public, including those with disabilities and parents of children with disabilities, regarding our use of IDEA Part B funds. The district is proposing that we use these funds to pay for salaries of both certified and classified staff. As you see as a slide up, and it's been put out on social media, the public is welcome to provide comment at that link, and additional comments may be sent to Abigail Young at the email abigail_young@tiffincityschools.org. And again, our job is to support our programs as much as we can, provide the best quality programs with the resources we have for all students, including those with disabilities.
Okay. Any comments or questions from anyone on the board? Okay.
We have to have like a form or time that the microphone's open for them to give comments, or, okay.
They want you to repeat yourself. They didn't hear you.
Hear me now?
Okay. Okay. I think Mr. Perez asked if there was if we're expecting comments at this moment.
Not at this time. It's an opportunity for people to provide comment if they so choose. However, we provided the link and the email address to gather those comments so we can aggregate them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item number 7. Let's see here. Number 7 is the opportunity for the public to address the board. So I'll read our paragraph around that here. So per board policy BDDH, each person addressing the board shall give his or her name and address. If several people wish to speak, each person is allotted 3 minutes until the total time of 30 minutes is used. During that period, no person may speak twice until all who desire to speak have had the opportunity to do so. The period of public participation may be extended by a vote of the majority of the board present and voting. Persons wishing to submit comment can do so by emailing TCS board comments at tiffincityschools.org. The meeting will be publicly available via Facebook. So at this time, anyone who wishes to address the board, please feel free to do so. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item number 8, the consent agenda. A motion to discuss.
So moved.
Second.
So we'll read the headings here. There's quite a few today. So item 8.1, approval of previous board minutes. 8.2, the treasurer's report. 8.3, retirements. 8.4, resignations. 8.5, administrative employment. 8.6, employment of professional staff for 23-24. 8.7, employee support staff for 23-24. 8.8, employee support staff for 24-25. And 8.9, support staff changes. 8.10, non-renewal of contracts. 8.11, donations and grants. 8.12, stipends. 8.13, fund-to-fund transfers. And I believe that concludes all the items for agenda item number 8. Any questions or discussion?
Just thank you to those for the donations and grants this month and for all those that they support.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado, the last 2 years at the high school. I don't know if you're still here. It's been a pleasure. And again, to all the individual teachers in there.
Okay. Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Kizabeth?
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi? Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. All right, we'll move on to item 9, action items. So item 9.1, approval of the 5-year forecast and assumptions. Motion?
Moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Again, this pertains to Mr. Cook's previous presentation.
Echoing Ms. Steffi's thank yous.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very clear and very concise and much appreciated.
I try. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cook?
Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yay.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes. Okay, item 9.2, adoption of a resolution to recreate the position and recall Robert Bose.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Okay, I don't want to reiterate what all goes into this, Mr. Nadeau.
Sure. So the resolution is to recommend the recreation of the position of Assistant Superintendent and then issue immediately a recall to Mr. Bose as Assistant Superintendent pending the rest of his contract. He's an invaluable member of the leadership team. His teamwork, his dedication is needed as we continue to move forward as a district. And so that's the recommendation made.
And I think going back, I think the position was created in 2017. I wasn't here. The position of Assistant Superintendent. I think at some point, maybe for another board down the future to consider what we do with that position. But now we're down to a handful of administrators. So thank you, Mr. Bose, and Ms. Tewitt as well, and Mr. DeVore. All of you are having to pick up more slack now since we have less of you, and you're all very appreciated. So thank you.
Again, Mr. Nadeau, you've communicated the proposed administrative structure to the staff in anticipation of this meeting, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Bose continues to be under contract through July 31st, 2026?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, Mr. Cook?
Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi, Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. All right, item 9.3, approval of the 24-25 student parent handbooks. Any motion to discuss?
Second.
All right. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, the staff, for putting these together. They're quite labor intensive, especially if you have a lot of changes to make, which I don't think there were many this time, but they're very important to have. They're great references, and there's a lot of work put forth to state the direction we want to go.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Cook?
Steffi, Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes. All right, item 9.4, approve the 260-day employee calendar. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Nadeau?
This just allows us to operate more efficiently. We have several different calendar iterations, whether you are a 255 or a 260 calendar employee by the board. Moving us to one 260-day employee calendar allows us all to operate efficiently and effectively without having multiple calendars with different holidays and days off.
Thank you. Any discussion or comment from the board? All right, Mr. Cook?
Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi, Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. All right, item 9.5, approve the OAPC 570 insurance MOU. A motion?
Second.
Any,
So this aligns the language with OAPC 570 to the other district agreements. We understand that we have some things that we want to adjust and clean up moving forward, but this in particular just cleans up what we're doing for the current contract year, which is the ending, and we will go in negotiations in next January.
okay, any questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Cook?
Mrs. Steffi, Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. All right, item 9.6 is the approval of the NCO ESC County Services Agreement for 24-25. Get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Nadeau?
So this is our annual spring adjustment that we get with the ESC contract. As Mr. Cook pointed out earlier, it's one of our larger contracts for purchase services. We did see a small reduction in the spring this year compared to what we had. So that's a great adjustment for us. But again, understanding where we're at and looking at how we do things effectively and efficiently, this will be something that we continue to evaluate as we move forward.
Yeah, I think you called it small. It's $361,153.54. But we also absorbed the position into the district, so it kind of reduces that, but we also don't have the tech. That's still a purchase service, so, but I think it still shows that we're working towards that. So thank you, guys.
Any other discussion? Okay, Mr. Cook?
Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi, Mr. Perez, Mr. Williams.
Yes. All right, item 9.7, approve the NCAT service agreement for 24-25. Any motion?
So moved.
Second.
This has been historically done by the district. It has changed names from SCAT to NCAT, so that it's our transportation agreement.
Yep. Any discussion or questions? All right, Mr. Cook.
Okay. Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi, Mr. Perez, Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. All right, item 9.8, approve a PT services professional services agreement. Get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Dove?
So the district did a request for proposals for related services for students with disabilities. So this proposal includes occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech language. This is a 3-year agreement that we were able to do. We accepted 3 bids. PT Services won that bid based on their overall proposal of quality of services plus also financial cost. And again, being able to lock in those prices for 3 years gives us some stability. And since I've been here in 18 months, we have done 3 requests for proposals. So again, that takes away from our efficiency and what we're doing. So we're recommending the 3-year contract.
I noticed the pricing for 24-25, and then there's only a small increase then as we go from 25 through 27. So we get 1 year of one price and then 2 years of a second price, right?
Correct. And next year's price actually stays the same as our ending contract.
Okay, so that helps us with some of that inflationary pressure then. Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions or comment? Okay, Mr. Cook?
Mr. Perez. Yes. Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi, Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. All right, item 9.9, approve SLP services agreement. Get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Nadeau?
So as we just talked about with the related services, there's always staffing challenges with speech language pathologists. And even though we have a contract with PT Services, we still have a need for additional support, which could not be met through that agreement. So we have contracted with 2 providers here in order to make up that gap and difference in order to ensure all students with disabilities who receive speech language services are going to receive those.
Any questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Cook?
Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi, Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. Item 9.10, approve the High Road School ESY services. Get a motion?
Second.
So this is for extended school year services. We have students that receive services due to the nature of their disability outside of the district. This is one of those students. And due to the nature, in accordance with federal law, the IEP team determines whether or not extended school year services are appropriate. And this is our agreement for them to provide those necessary services.
Questions or comments? All right, Mr. Cook?
Mrs. Steffi, Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. All right, and item number 9.11, approve on-site technical services agreement. Get a motion?
Moved. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Nadeau?
This continues the current agreement we have for the services of Mr. Strang in technology for the 24-25 school year. We have been pleased with his services moving forward and with all our other moving pieces and parts and where we're going and the recommendations he's made to try and make sure we're efficient and being fiscally responsible, we wanted to recommend the continuation of that service for 1 year.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Cook?
Mr. Kizabeth,
Yes.
Ms. Steffi,
Yes.
Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. Okay, so moving on to item number 10, board discussion.
Hear me now? So I think this meeting, I'm going to look at the middle school because we've had lots of things going on there. Last week was the moot court and Ms. Cook's class, I believe. And tomorrow they're doing Shark Tank. So looking forward to that activity and all the volunteers that show up for that and the projects that the kids put out. But in the middle school, we've had 2 kids, Skylar Helmstetter and Tavernmore. Is that anybody? Tavernmore, sorry about that. Apologies. We moved on with the Power of the Pen, which if anybody's been here is a giant program in our school that we host. And then for track there, we had Xavier Melik and Caroline Newlove who went on to the state meet. Caroline in the, I believe, the 200 and Xavier in the 800, who I think also set one of the fastest times for a kid in our school and in the state this year, and hope to continue seeing them succeed. And in the high schools, end of the year, we had graduation and great moment again to see all our kids there. But we still have graduates moving on. Baseball is still playing today, and then they start the next round of the playoffs. Good luck to them. Track, we have several district champions. I'm not going to name them all because they're on our website, and I'm proud of all of them. But they'll be running again this week to try to make state. And I believe that if I've forgotten anybody, it's not that I'm not thinking of you guys or seeing all your sports, but keep up the good work. And then I think in terms of projects, the track, if you've been down there, it's already, I believe, on the blacktop level. And from what you've explained, stay off of it for 30 days, and then we'll see some changes on there. And they're doing some improvements on the tennis courts as well, so people can see that we're maintaining our facilities. So, and then on to the next school year, right?
Also, just a kudos to the team who set up graduation and all of the work that goes into prepping that. Getting to do this year, both as a board member and a parent, you get to see even more how much people put into it. And so just a thank you to all the teams. I know that Debo was out there and the flags that went up, all of those pieces. So thank you to all of those teams who really just do so much. And Mrs. Warnament, who keeps us all organized and where we need to be. So thank you.
If I could, I'd like to just make sure that we recognize one more time all of our retirees for their service that they made to the district. We're appreciative of them. And as we welcome them to their retirement, we also have 2 new members I'd like to just make a special welcome to, which is Mr. Brad Jones, who's joined TCS next year as school psychologist, and Mrs. Michelle Wise, who is joining the district as Kraut 2-3 principal.
I would also like to keep facilities on the plate. The last that the Superintendent's Advisory Committee met, there were just a few members there, and there was a survey put out to the other members on what they would like to recommend to the board. There's been a lot of work done there. On a personal note, feel that we are getting very behind in facilities. And when Mr. Cook talks about losing students and how that impacts the district, facilities plays into that. And again, I don't have statistics on this, but I understand there was a family did not enroll in the district because we don't have air-conditioned buildings. So I think as a district, we need to look, and I know finances are an issue, but there's been a lot of work done by that facilities group, 75 individuals in the community. I would like to see that completed, and I'd like to see a recommendation brought to this group so we start looking forward to what we want to do and where we want to go. I'm a firm believer, we move forward or we move backwards. We don't stay where we are. I want to see us moving forward.
So to that point, Mr. Nadeau and I had a digital meeting, Zoom, with, I believe it's Cheryl from TDA. She's working on getting all of that compiled. It's my understanding from that meeting that that was the master plan was finished, and then she's compiling all that. She's supposed to get it to us. I'd forgotten. I haven't heard anything from her, so we'll follow up on that. But then those discussions can take place on a recommendation once we have that from her.
Okay.
Follow up on that, you mentioned facilities, and we had the example of the hurricanes hitting Florida, and you mentioned the idea that we should plan better. We know we have major improvements we need at the stadium coming up in about, I believe it's 2 years, the turf. We did the track on our own, and I think the community has to understand that is, we maintain that stadium at this point. I don't know what the understandings were in the past, but I think at some point we need to reconvene all the people that were involved in those previous decisions and start getting on a plan where we can get community involvement. Because that stadium, as most people argue, belongs to the community. Well, we're going to need support to maintain it if we're going to keep it here. So.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we'll move on to item number 11, executive session. We do have an executive session this evening. It's to consider the employment and compensation of a public employee. I think we need a motion, right? All right.
So much.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Cook.
Excuse me. Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mrs. Steffi. Yes. Mr. Perez. Yes. Mr. Kizabeth.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Executive session.
Do not believe we'll come back with anything to vote on or any sort of action this evening. Okay. What's that? Next meeting, item number 12, let's see, next meeting is June 24th, 2024 at 6:30. So move on to item number 13 to adjourn.
And we'll have a work session at 5:45.
Yes, we'll have a work session at 5:45, yes.
Okay.
Did we just, I just get confused there. All right. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.